Hello, this is Heather Gates, and I welcome you to the Stand in the And podcast, where we have honest conversations about the messy complexity of the human experience, where we get stuck, and how we find forward, in the and of it all where many things are true at once. This podcast is designed especially for those of us who want to make things more beautiful and better for everyone, and sometimes need reminding that we are human too. I'm so glad you're here. Good morning and welcome back to the Stand in the And podcast, y'all. I'm so excited. Today I'm joined by a dear friend and colleague, Lisa Macon Harrison. Lisa, thank you for being here today.
Oh, what a joy. I've been looking forward to this. And I know people who are listening can't see, but I have a visual for you to be in my background with you today.
Nice. Y'all are missing this, but it looks like an and sign lit up with lights and everything. So
lit up with lights. It's not as pretty as the one you've painted that is
thank
always
you.
behind your visual when we get to see you, but I'm gonna channel the and today.
I love that commitment to the to the brand. So way to go. I know you obviously, and I'll say a little bit more about that, but tell listeners what you want them to know about Lisa Macon Harrison before we jump in.
Goodness, what to know about me? Let's see. I think it's important to know that I am a very tired, eager, and proud local public health workforce. I guess what would you call me? A cheerleader. A little bit of a cheerleader
I was
for the
thinking
public
advocate.
health workforce.
Yeah.
Love some public health workforce, all the work that they do, all of the incredible complexity that the public health workforce manages now and earlier and into the future. And then I would also say I'm a similarly tired and eager and very proud mama of a high school senior, and that takes a lot of similar energy. So we're busy in all the ways these days. Work and home have lots of fun and lots of complexity, like we like to talk about.
Well, and I think we're going to probably talk right on about that today. And I was actually thinking about how our paths crossed originally. So you're going to have to help fact check this with me. But I think the math is 20 plus years ago. So I think I was in graduate school. And did my practicum at the North Carolina Institute for Public Health with the Center for Genomics. So that would have been around like 2004. And I think you were there at that time with the Center for Public Health Preparedness. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that little intersection of research and practice is that sweet spot that we've had in common since then. So I love that 20-plus year history. After that, we'll just round up to the plus sign and not worry about
what the rest of the math is.
The details. And the 20-plus years of research, practice, policy, and fun stuff.
Yeah, just always. And when I think about you, I think of somebody in my life who's always I think of you as a visionary. You know, when we think about how we're similar or different, like you're imagining it, and then I can kind of help put the blocks together on how to get there. But I have loved crossing paths with you in that way, in so many ways, on different projects and different organizations over the years since then. So I'm grateful for, not only what you do for the state of North Carolina, but how you have intersected with my life professionally, and then certainly been a dear friend for me over the years. So I'm glad to see you. I'm glad to have you here. I love your headphones. Y'all are, again, missing the visual. We look like that we could be directing air traffic control right now with our headsets. We'll see. Ashley will let us know whether we've done a good job choosing the headgear that suits us. But Lisa, you mentioned complexity, and I do want to come back to that. But before we do, kind of per our tradition here, I'm curious, you mentioned a little bit this already, what and you're standing in, right? This sort of tired, eager. I don't know if there's more that you want to say about kind of today, the and that you're showing up in particularly, or if that covers it for you.
Well, I think as public health professionals, we've been thinking a lot in recent months about present and future.
Mm,
So I think that would be the and that I'm trying to wrestle with is, how do we lead in public health, in local communities, um, with strapped resources that continue to fall away instead of come in the door. And so I,
right.
I think that present and future is going to be a different gear, right?
Mhm.
We're going to have one gear for now and one gear for later. That's usually the case. That's not something terribly new to us, but it feels more intense
Mm.
to understand the difference between now and later.
Mm,
And I yesterday, I did write this down in preparation because, I ran across a new Amanda Gorman poem that I had not read before.
mm,
And in it, there is a stanza that says, "We're burdened to live out these days, while at the same time, blessed to outlive them."
mm.
And that's my "and" right now.
Will you
Amanda named it.
I feel like my body just felt that before my brain registered it. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
what it
Amanda can
mhm.
do that for you. She is quite the light with her words, and I just love that. And so
Mm.
that is how I can explain my "and" with her words better than with mine.
No, yeah, love honoring the and with, and it once you one of the things I think that is curious is once you kind of dialed into thinking about things in this and frame, you hear a lot of people talking about it, right? You
Yeah,
hear a lot of language around part of me feels this way, part of me feels this way. You hear people talk about paradox, and the things that we're navigating. So it is a bizarre sort of meta thing that we're doing by naming the "and" in this way, but I think it's fascinating. One of the things that's surprising to me today, clearly I know that we're gonna do this "what and are we standing in" thing. So, morning of podcast, I'm like, "What's my answer gonna be? What am I standing in today?" And it was interesting that as I asked myself that question even, like the question as a tool, as a mindfulness tool to go, "What and am I standing in?" And something would come up, and then I was like, "Well, what else also?" I'm feeling frustrated and grateful that that teenager even still lives here to be playing that loud music, right? All it's so it's it's an interesting thing just to ask the question, "What and am I standing in?" Um, I think where I land right now is, I'm pretty sunny side up today, and I'll explain that in, I think, the weather. So I don't know if it's as cool where you are, but it is feeling very fall vibe here in the mountains. It's apple picking season. Like, I think I can take a deeper breath when the air
mhm,
clears, like this. So
mhm.
I'm feeling uplifted just by the energy of outside right now. And
Yeah,
I'm
especially in the mountains, fall is the best.
yes, yes. And I have a whisper, I think it's a baby whisper of overwhelm that I'm noticing. And it's helpful just to notice because already this morning I was like, "Oh, I feel you." It's like sunny side up with overwhelm rising, like, how how does one want to notice this before it becomes the dominant narrative of my present? I have a lot of moving parts right now, with client work and podcast and other creative projects, and I've had family in town and just right, birthdays and things. So I'm just noticing that I'm like whisper of overwhelm. Mhm.
I
Yeah.
sense a hike in the woods in your near future.
I love that for me, future self. So,
Mhm, mhm.
yeah.
Enjoy the fall air and calm
Yes,
the whisper.
exactly.
Yeah,
And,
I like it.
I think we could do I know we could, and we will just put a pin in this, a whole episode on overwhelm and what it really is or what it isn't, and how we navigate that and how we get stuck in all those things. So we're not here to talk about overwhelm necessarily, but it is not uh, unconnected from what we are going to talk about, which I think is really leading in VUCA.
Mm. Indeed.
So maybe I'll frame it up and then you actually have an update. Per usual, you have an updated model of the one that I've been talking about that I'd love to invite folks into and for us to understand a little bit more. So, VUCA, for those folks who've not heard this acronym, it's an acronym, VUCA, stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. I did not invent it. I actually, and I dug this book out again. Maybe we really do need to make this podcast have visuals because it doesn't help for me to show it to y'all like I'm showing it to Lisa. But this book, Moments of Impact: How to Design Strategic Conversations That Accelerate Change by Chris Ertel and Lisa K. Solomon, is the first place that I read about VUCA. And it's probably been, I don't know the math on that, 10 at least years ago. And it felt very resonant at the time. Kind of, I was working with primarily hospital systems and health departments at the time. It was in a post ACA sort of landscape, lots of change. And it just felt helpful to name the change and the experience that we were
Yeah.
all sort of feeling and navigating. I continue to feel grounded by just giving experiences words that are hard to talk about. So since then, and Lisa, you and I have talked about it. Certainly, we talked about VUCA quite a bit in a COVID context as you led through that. And we find ourselves in, continuing to be in times of uncertainty and complexity in particular. Um, Before we talk about the flip side of that, I'm curious for you when we really break that apart, when you think about those words separately, is there a piece of VUCA for you that feels trickier than the other? Like, is it the volatility, the uncertainty, complexity, or is it all kind of the mush together is the
I
same?
I think right now in this moment, in the present for public health, I
Yeah.
think uncertainty is the biggest one that is just hard to help others with. I mean, we can get a little bit more comfortable based on our own experiences or our own personality types. But to really coach and help and lead and inspire others through uncertainty is a real it's a real hard thing to do well, I've decided.
It's official.
It's just
It's
it's
official.
just tough.
Yeah, and it's interesting how often I feel like uncertainty comes up even in the podcast. I mean, Ashley and I in episode 2 we're talking about navigating the not yet and just the sense of this what you do in the meantime or in the not yet. I'm the same. So just from how I navigate, not even talking about team, but of them all, because truly complexity, I love it. So the complexity
We're used to
part,
that. We've got that
yeah,
down.
I'm like, yes, let's cover a dry erase board with it. Like, my brain likes to kind of get curious about all those parts and how they fit together and how to optimize those things. I think it's probably quite common that uncertainty is just hard. We've talked about this sort of
Mhm.
or, natural inclination in uncertainty to go worst case scenario too with it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
having to train myself, especially as we launch this podcast, and I know I've talked about that, is like, what what else? What might be interesting? What, might be helpful? And I don't know. I need some neuroscientist on this podcast. If y'all haven't seen my request for that, I need some nerdery deeper in here about some of these things because it just feels true that we're wired more for the threat side of uncertainty. So yeah, I feel the same.
Absolutely.
And in working with teams, I think you're right. So
I think it's just human brains
yeah,
don't like the open loops that we want to close all the loops. We want to put
yep,
all the things away. We want to feel like we're organized. We want to feel like that the chaos we can control and we can't always. And
yeah,
so that is a hard thing to sit with and then to lead with.
yeah, definitely a tough and a stand in. I was interested lately. You and I had a session with one of your teams, and you had an alternate VUCA definition that I think I'm curious about. So will you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I sort of found it by accident, as one does, on the Google. Um,
Nice.
just getting ready for the meeting and trying to find the right visual and make sure the agenda was like you and I like them. And, this visual popped up in a new framework, and at least the Google tells me
Yeah.
that Robert or Bob Johansson is the gentleman who came up with VUCA Prime, which sort of serves as this strategic response to the challenges of how you address VUCA and have more positive actions around it, because
Mm,
the solution to some of that uncertainty and some of the things we can't figure out is at least to act, right? To have active hope and to get in there and to do some stuff. And so the V that has meant volatility, in traditional VUCA, you should, as a leader, work on turning into vision or just figuring out, the focus, the purpose, the goal into the future. And I think most of us who've had a work life are used to trying that exercise,
mhm,
and so that feels like the action that is the response to volatility. And then under uncertainty, Bob has understanding, getting, the feedback and perspective to sort of refine your plan and, at least do some PDSA cycles in there while you're not certain about where the budget's going to land in the future of local health department in the next 6 months. Let's at least try some things and some scenarios and figure out how you get feedback and perspectives from others on solving that uncertainty. And that feels like forward, as you say.
mhm,
And then with the complexity, VUCA Prime says, get to clarity,
mm.
create the plan, stick with it, turn it into those actionable tactics. And again, that's the way forward, is to find clarity. Even if it's not exacting, find the two things that I think during COVID, you helped us so much saying, all right, we don't know what the future holds, and it's really complex to figure out your staffing model, but let's at least look at the next 2 weeks and 2 months.
Mhm.
We might not yet know the next 2 years, but let's see what we can figure out with two weeks and 2 months. And that clarity of the at least a timeline that we knew we were going to live in
Yeah.
could help. That helped with chunking down the complexity into these bits and parts that were, easier to figure out. And then last is what has been in the VUCA world, ambiguity. You should, as a leader, seek agility. So just being flexible. And I had a nursing director at one point early on here at Granville Vance Public Health who sort of coined the term for our team, that we are public health flexible.
Mm.
We know things are going to change. We know that it's not going to look the same in 2 weeks or 2 months than it does today, but let's just be flexible with what we need to do to respond to that. And so I think turning ambiguity into agility feels like a natural exercise for most in public health.
Yeah, and I wanna circle back, I think, to one of the things you first said before even you got into the acronym. You used the language active hope, right? That
Mhm.
kind of having that model, and so in particular thinking about active, because I was thinking about uncertainty yesterday. As one just ponders, right? Everybody sits around pondering complexity and uncertainty, right? I'm sure they do. Or these are our people that are listening to this podcast.
At
Are
least we find each other, right?
right. For everybody else who sits around and ponders, such things, it occurred to me, I mentioned a minute ago that we were thinking about uncertainty, and even as we launch podcasts, how's it gonna go? But that uncertainty that is something that I am choosing feels very different than navigating context
Uh,
that feels like it is happening. Because just when
uh-huh.
I think about VUCA, I don't think, "Oh, I'm launching all these creative pursuits," right? I think of it as
Mhm.
I am navigating this in an environment that I do not control. And so it just felt like an important insight even for me for, like, the tools that we're gonna use and the frameworks, because it's often too I hang with me. I'm quite sure when I was pondering that this thought went somewhere. I'm not sure if I can claim it or not. But why that matter, it's like it's so that's one piece of it, that it's this external thing that's happening. And also, as you and I have talked about this before, it's, a situation where you said act of hope, but where action is required of us at some level, right? That doing nothing does not really feel like an option. So I think about you, like I was thinking about your team in COVID, VUCA context, a lot happening. And as a leader in a public health agency, there's no, we're going to just sit here and see what happens, right? It's ready or not. We're going to send an email at five
Here we
o'clock.
go.
Ready or not, we're going to give the press conference. Ready or not. So it strikes me as a specific kind of piece of this where I think, but I'm interested in your reflection back, where it feels like VUCA is happening and we, to stand in our integrity in our role, must find forward. Whereas you hear me say, yep, I just stood back afraid for 7 years and didn't do the podcast until finally I was ready and the scales tipped in that direction and they could move that way. Right there, we're talking about context where there's no waiting, there's not, we're gonna wait till Heather feels ready. It's today this is happening.
Yeah, I think that's an essential way of combining the right personality types and the right, community members in the work of public health because, this work does take processing and uncertainty and, pondering and some frameworks and some theory and some research to roll up into the doing and the plan, do, study, act cycles that you do in quality improvement and the things that it takes to move projects forward, to move
Mhm.
coalitions of people forward, to take the energy to use influence rather than, um, authority in your leadership. And so it's an important thing to harness. I guess that's the way I think about it,
Mm,
the combination of those energies of processing and doing. And,
mm,
we all have different affinities or are on the spectrum somewhere between process and doing in most days.
mhm.
Uh, some days I'm more of a doer, some days I'm definitely more thoughtful about what's coming next and plan for next. And that's, a gift to have a job that allows for that, right? And
Mhm.
that gives you the thinking time and the self-actualization to study how others have done it before and get it right, or at least get it closer to right for your community than you might have if you didn't look and see whatever else, has been done before. So, I just have that respect of harnessing. I guess I'll go to, the past before we get to the present, before we get to the future.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like that's what we're putting together as leaders in public health. And, really what led to a lot of the work of the academic health department model to make
Mm.
sure that we were pulling those things together before we were doing.
And you said that we're always on some, I don't remember your exact language, but on this kind of in dancing in the and of planning and doing, right? Process and doing. I guess it just strikes me that in the whole range of the work that you may be tasked with, that the urgency of that, right? It looks a little different when we have space and time for more versus when we're in crisis. And we've talked about kind of routine complexity,
Yeah.
the day to day, we take it in, we can engage, and then in crisis, how different it looks and feels. Where, yeah, I mean, I see you head nodding, so I don't
Mhm.
know what's resonating with you about that, but I see that those same
So
things juggled differently.
So, since I'm back and forth in this district with 2 counties and a local health department in Granville and in Vance counties, I have 2 offices, and I'm in my Tuesday office today, which is Vance. But in my Monday, Wednesday office in Granville, I have a Post-it note that I wrote down after one of our conversations where you actually taught me crisis equals clarity, and the
Mm,
rest of the time, we have a lot more of the ambiguity, a lot more of the complexity. But there is something somewhat satisfying and even driving adrenaline to decision making, um, in the brain, back to the neuroscience,
Yeah,
that if you're in a crisis, you've got that 5 o'clock email to tell the community what's going on, and you've got that sense of urgency that drives the things that you do, and it might not be as perfect as you'd like it. You might not get to do 3 drafts and ensure that it has no mistakes before that email goes out, but you've gotta get the message going and make sure that people know what's happening, and, there's something satisfying about that mode when you can do it well.
yeah,
When you have the tools to do it well. I think public health sometimes lacks the funding, the tools, and the technology advancements to get it done as well as we would like sometimes, but
right.
we're gonna get there. That's the future. The future is ours, and we're gonna figure that one out.
Well, it strikes back to the VUCA prime model, right? If the C now is clarity, this sort of how we get to clarity, how much time we have to get to clarity, who's involved in getting us to clarity. We do a lot of strategic planning work, and I talk about strategy being, kind of focus and clarity grounded in reality and results. I mean, that's all we're trying to do is, in your example, what's now, next, and later, whatever the time period is. If that's in a crisis context, it's like now is in the hour and next is the next hour, and, you know, and later's tomorrow versus something spread out over time. Um, but yeah, and you mentioned working with teams and working across folks. I'm curious for you in that dance from sort of planning to doing, um, getting to clarity, all of that leading in this sort of VUCA environment. What gets sticky for you? Where do you get stuck?
You know, I think over the 20 plus years, I have been trying to navigate where I get stuck. I've learned a lot about the power of collaboration with others who have different personality types or different ways of looking at problems, and how critically important it is to have a leadership team, um, to have people, with you on the journey of getting, to clarity, of getting to understanding, of sharing the vision with you and being flexible with you. That's the gift that we have, and why I said early on I'm such a public health workforce advocate and cheerleader, is that the people who are attracted to the work of public health and want to make their communities better, want to make people live longer and have higher quality of life as they are in this world with other humans, is just a gift. The people who do this work are amazing people.
Agree.
I get to work with cool humans all the time
Yep.
who have other people's best interest in mind, and I do not take that for granted. So, when you can learn to respect different viewpoints, different, affinities for for the focus and the details, it it
Mm.
it feels like magic. And so I had just gotten off of a meeting prior to our meeting, and it was our Thrive
Oh,
team
yeah.
meeting, and
Nice.
my project manager on that is just such a great detail person. So I have these amazing public health nurses, as I have always bragged, can do one of everything and then figure out 17 other things that they have never even been trained in or tried before, and they do it all with aplomb. And I just am so fortunate that the nurses I work with in particular can do everything from, patch plaster walls that have a crack in them to write up some, wonderful grant to do a new project in between the time that they're taking care of individual patients. They're just incredible humans, and I love them.
Yeah.
And they have skills that I definitely don't on the detail front, and they see things I don't see, and they
Mm.
know things I don't know, and we walk into this office every day understanding that about each other.
Mm.
They know I'm the one who has the big picture thinking and the new ideas, and I'm so excited about, next week's meeting with this partner or that grant mission. And then they remind me what needs to go on the agenda, or make sure that the details I might not be seeing, that they can communicate so that I'm also thinking about those things. And when you find the people who understand how you show up every day and the things that you bring in your brain to the job,
Mhm.
and that they bring their things to the job that are very different, it sounds like a duh moment. Of course, Lisa, everybody knows that and shows up to work that way. Well, it actually takes a little time to really figure that out. And it takes a lot of self-reflection to know what you're good at and
Mhm.
what you're not, and to remain confident in your decision making when you know how to, um, you know, tap into the gifts that others bring you. And I just think that's a real key cornerstone to good leadership.
Well, and I think I'm glad you mentioned the self-awareness piece of that because I think we can, speaking of where we get stuck, I think on collaborative teams, we can see strength in others and feel like I should also be that way. Like, "Oh my gosh, this is I need to be this. I am inadequate because I am this." And what I hear you saying is that clarity about where I am strong
Mhm.
and, right, we know that we all have we can flex and bend beyond our natural tendencies and do things, but this sort of lean into, "Here's where I'm naturally strong, and I will then trust others to be in their strength also," I think
Uh-huh.
is a lot on the growth side. So is our
Well, and we
Go ahead.
we got good at that as a team when we did the assessment called Strengths Finder.
Yeah,
So we've
right.
we've done some exploratory assessments, and I've been here 14 years now, so we've really gotten to know each other well over those years, and also understand and talk through what our strengths are. But I think that's part of the processing. That's part of, some people might push back on that a little, especially people that I work with, to say, "Hey, I don't have time for these, fun leadership meetings where you and Heather kind of coach us through how to
Ponder.
think about
That's
what we're
enough
doing.
pondering, please, enough pondering.
L
Yeah.
Let me go out and deal with this septic system that's failing and
Right.
get this stuff, done, and you can have your processing over there." But one of the best conversations I had about people's strengths was from my environmental health
Mm,
supervisor a few years ago, who came in and said, that he never knew it was called winning over others, that he knew how to he said, "I just know how to talk to people, and I know how to make sure they understand the rules and the regulations that, help them not get sick." But we learned with StrengthsFinder that that
a
was his one of
superpower.
his strong superpowers, is winning over others and communicating and teaching them what they needed to know. And I mean, yeah, that's what we do in public health.
Well,
We win others over.
and what's standing out to me about this, as I keep looking back to this VUCA acronym and how you describe VUCA prime, understanding was piece of it. And I think when we talked about it earlier, it was more about understanding kind of our strategic context, but this piece about understanding ourselves and the team, again, all of this, y'all, is like there's VUCA, which feels like it sounds. That's why I think I like it. It just it yeah, it
It
feels
fits.
like what it sounds like it is. Volatility,
Mhm.
uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, and we're like, what are the tools that help us
Uh-huh.
lead into and through that? And if understanding is a piece of it, what you're saying for me now really resonates with this sort of understanding the relational strengths and assets and our own strengths and assets, like what a foundation that is for how to move forward.
Mhm.
So as we're figuring out, now, next, and later, and this and that, and what are we gonna do? All of this doing because everybody working in an organization, whether your business model includes collaborative models or not, has a team. So you are in the business of collaborative advantage at some level because of the nature of team. And
Mhm.
so the understanding within the team that helps things move more smoothly, more robustly, if we can really piece together like, okay, Lisa help set the vision and we just know that we're going to need somebody else. It's probably not you to help map all the details out. And that's okay. But that we don't waste a lot of energy. I'm always very curious. And part of my fascination with the and is trying to capture, like use all of our energy toward the vision that we have. So anytime we're not wasting energy feeling like we should be a different way or trying to understand each other and we keep missing each other like that, and not efficient. I don't say I get itchy about the word efficiency because I feel like sometimes it squeezes out humanity from process. So I think I would say
Mhm.
effective, relationship
Mm.
effectiveness as
Yep.
part of understanding that feels to me like the leading forward side of of VUCA is what's resonating for me as you talk about kind of understanding across the team. And where we can get stuck in that if we, I think maybe don't honor the strengths, to use your language, about what we are and how that pieces together. What are some other places when you think about this, especially this notion of action? I feel like before maybe we talked
Uh,
some about communication in this context. I don't know if
uh-huh.
if that feels like a trail to get curious about or if there's something else coming up for you wanna dig into.
Yeah, communication is definitely one of those things that can get in the way if it's not done well enough, often enough, and clearly enough. And one of those things that I'm always working on. We have performance reviews annually. Most everybody in the working world does, and every single year I have been in public health, I have always reflected. Gosh, I sure could improve on my communication approach and style and frequency. It never goes away. It's always an improvement opportunity because there's so much more and so many more ways and modes to communicate through. Um, it's just this never-ending matrix of opportunity and challenge. And so I'm grateful that it's a foundational capability of public health that we're now recognizing and trying to
Yeah,
at least build our skill set around in public health in a different way. Before it's been sort of like piled onto the health educator's role and the
right.
nurse's role in different job descriptions and always been present, but it's never been separately tended to for training or funding in the same way since, the last 3 to 5 years when we're like, "Ooh, clearly we need to be using technology in new and different ways in all of its forms to make sure that the public knows and understands, you know, different behavior interventions, different,
Yeah.
information around preparedness and response, or in more simple terms, just we as a public health workforce have to communicate those effective things that we're doing to contribute to community positively, and that's just a responsibility we all have, and new ways of figuring it out are just always around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, and
It's
so
hard. It's hard to get it right.
it does strike me. So as, again, somebody who works with leaders, teams, and multi-agency partnerships, consistently communication is the thing that comes up no matter what is right. Whatever, wherever the conversation starts, kind of all roads will lead eventually to communication on a sticky note. And it means a lot of things. I think we have to be careful. Sometimes we get lost in ourselves because we use that word to represent a lot of things. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm always asking groups like, peel the onion layer back for me one more time. Communication to whom, about what, for what intended result. Because I think sometimes with communicate, well, two things I'll say first is in the public health context, at least separating, do we mean communication to the community outward, right? In service to behavior change, in service to, right, making sure folks have the information that they need to um, pursue health in that way. Are we talking about how our team communicates, right? The culture of a leadership team, that sort of stuff. Always still words. Um, Result is different, intended result is different. Either way, we know that communication is how human beings interact, right? It is the currency with which we engage. And I agree with you, it consistently is hard and we're not the best at it. In this context, I would divide it again into primarily what comes up is kind of communication that is the relational side and communication that is to coordinate. Right? So when we talk about, um, communication sometimes to teams, it's the right hand needs to know what the left hand is doing, so we put the thing out in a way that the pieces make sense and it all goes together. There's that. And then there's the, Lisa, I need to give you some tricky, I wanna give you some reflection about, your communication as a leader and how that impacts the team, right? It's that more emotional, relational, peopling side of it. So there's a lot in
Yeah.
communication, and even as we think about this sort of VUCA and VUCA prime context, if we're thinking about vision, right? Almost you can lay it across all this. When you're thinking about vision, you could see where communication fits in there. Understanding, clarity, agility. Is there a place for you as somebody in particular? Because you and I, if it's not been clear to everyone so far, Lisa and I are in different pieces of the spectrum when it comes to this big picture detail situation. I'm probably more on the detail side. And I do think can build a bridge. I think part of why you and I connect so well is I can help sort of build the bridge between your vision and more detail side of it. So I'm somewhere kind of
Mhm.
maybe across. But as somebody who's geared in vision and operates in leadership, um, I would say tenacious, bold, visionary leadership. When it comes to, because you've talked about the importance of communication and collaboration, what gets sticky in there? Where do you find yourself getting stuck there, and how do you, um, I don't know if mediate's the right word, but how do you what are the what are the ways that you navigate or sort of manage that stuck?
Well, I think you've taught me, connection before content. And so those are two really good categories to put your communication efforts into, because I've had to learn just the general effectiveness of meetings over time. Because we have leadership team meetings, we have collaboration meetings, we have task force meetings, we have a lot of meetings in our lives as public health leaders. And there are people who show up and want a really good use of their time to be respected
Yep.
to different types of meetings. And so I've really had to learn to be really clear at the beginning of every meeting. Is this more of a connection meeting, and we're really going to get to know the assets of community, people who are in the room and what they have to offer for this particular project or mission that we have before us? Or is this a leadership team meeting where really we're sharing information and knowledge, and we're letting people know what's happening in the dental clinic versus the child health clinic versus the WIC clinic, and we're giving people updates on what to expect from each other when they see each other. That's also an important meeting. But you know what that's not? And some people can get frustrated. That's not a decision-making, problem-solving meeting.
Mhm.
That's not a meeting that takes data and uses it to come up with a solution. And some of the doctors, and finance officers and people who love those details and are so good at managing them at a fast pace really kind of want to get together and use good time to make a decision.
Mhm.
And so if I don't have like the birthday strawberry shortcake to connect with first, I'm not going to be as good at making that decision
You're
with
like, "I
those
need
data
my
points.
peopling and my pondering
I
first."
I've gotta have the connection. I've gotta make
Yeah.
sure that we've built trust so that we can share the data and information we need to share to make the best decision. And I've had to learn over time that I have to explain that to some of the docs in the room,
Mhm.
right? Like this is not a bad use of time. This is actually gonna get us to a better decision. And thank you for bringing the amazing revenue cycle data that will get us the decision that we need to make this week.
Yeah.
Great. It's not gonna be in the next 10 minutes. So, those are the kinds of things that you're constantly in different gears, but you're having to what it again, this probably took me a good, 12 of the 20 plus years to learn. You have to say that at the beginning. Say, "Okay,
Right.
this hour and a half time together has these 3 components, and this is why these 3 components are important to everybody in the room. And you might not like one of those 3 things that we're gonna have to spend some time on, and let's get to it so we can get to your favorite thing." I
Yeah.
mean, really, it takes that.
Well, and I mean, I keep coming back to this list. So clarity being one of the things that, I mean, there's a lot in what you just said related to clarity. Clarity and the purpose of the meeting, which if y'all never work with me, you know I'm a big fan of what are we here for? And
And are we making decisions or not? And
yeah,
what decisions are we making?
right. And I think it's actually, I'll have to look back, but I think it's in this Moments of Impact book that I mentioned in the beginning, is they talk about these phases of building common understand in my language. So I don't have the reference, so y'all can look it up, but generally building shared understanding, shaping options, and making decisions. And that we're always
Mhm.
working through that, right? Especially
I
when
love that.
when we're in a VUCA context. So it's not quick and easy, right? There's not an
Mm-mm.
easy A to B to C, and we just need to get together to figure it out. There's a lot in there. And if we are going to operate in this collaborative model, like you talked about, and we always are at some level if we're on a team, we have to make sure that folks have shared understanding. And I think that people get stuck a lot assuming that they do when they don't. And so
Yeah.
taking the time to say, here are the facts as I see them. Do you also see this is true? Well, how do you see it? What do you see is different? And then, because it does take some time, and that is an itchy place. So back to what you said before, like we're just ready. We have to take action, and we know that. And so to take the time in the beginning to like pull time apart and to sit there and really settle into building shared understanding across the team, which again, when you say strengths, people are going to see reality in a different way. So we need to make time to
Mhm.
understand how everybody sees it, which then shapes the options that we have to work with. Right? You're going to have different options depending on the reality that you're working in. And then from let's understand all the options, we can together make a decision. And again, we may not all love it and agree, but we understand where it came from and why we are the way we are. And back to thinking about crisis and sort of routine complexity. Sometimes you're having to run that track fast. Here's the situation, right? It's more like like here's where we are, here's what we could do, what are we going to decide? Boom. And you have to run that whole thing through in a meeting. Sometimes we get the grace of space and we can spread it out. We can have a big community gathering where we're sharing things and creating, right, common understanding, bringing folks in with lots of different experiences to then shape options. And the other. So, yeah, I feel like I just went down a rabbit hole with that, but it felt to me like clarity in meetings. What are we here to do? And then clarity about why it matters. So I do, yeah, all of that communication. And for you, my guess is a piece of that is clarity about what other people need in the meeting too, and making sure that we protect time for that, right? Like, oh, we have some folks
Mhm.
that think this way, so we do need to push all the way to
Mhm.
that third piece, because 'cause you're like, "I'm good with the connection," and I gotta say,
Yeah.
Chad Littlefield, here's a shout out to you again. Everybody that I know credits me for connection before content, and I'm gonna keep saying that I took that from Chad, so there's another shout out for Chad Littlefield. Um, buy all of his things, everybody. He's awesome.
The other the other thing it brings up the other thing it brings up for me in this moment that we're navigating today and into the future is this, you say also a lot at the beginning of meetings that we're humans, not robots. And,
Yep.
what that brings to the table for a leader is also connection, empathy, making space
Mm,
for trust to be built as we look at data and information and make decisions. And you have to have both of those. And in healthcare,
mhm,
providers of healthcare know that they have to have that connection with the patient, and we have to have connection with community, and you have to build trust and connection through story, through trust, through empathy, through being present. And
mhm,
those things take a lot of time. And I think it's frustrating in public health world to see how much public health leaders at national levels have been criticized, or also, thankfully, we've had really good ones who are super at communication. Mandy Cohen has come into mind. She was really good. during a time of crisis, and sort of laying out the facts and telling people the real story, but also having that connection piece
Mhm.
that cannot be underestimated. And if you have the gift of being able to translate connection with humans as you're giving hard information or uncertain information or ambiguous and complex information, that is the work of what's before us. And here's the dot 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 part. We're getting to the place where so much technology is being over
Mhm.
laid on top of all
Mhm.
of this that we're talking about. And so the "we're humans, not robots" is like, "Oh, but maybe not for long." Like this
Humans with
trust and
robot
empathy.
assistants. Yeah.
Humans with robot assistants and humanoid robots will be here soon. And, we've got to learn to make space and time for that human connection and human peace.
Yeah.
It's so important, and if we don't name it now as an essential part of communication,
Mm.
we'll just be stuck in data and graphs that thankfully I know a whole lot of wonderful friends who are good at visualizing data now and
Yep.
and helping us understand it and tell stories around it. I love it so much. I do get I do get wonky with my details when it comes to data, but I also love the translation of that. So I guess that's my other word that we haven't talked a lot about that we
Yeah.
can go down another rabbit hole
I
in, is like
know.
this
With
translation between, what we do and how we do it and how important it is and how fast we're going to be expected to do it into the future, and how we've got to translate the human side of all this all the time.
yeah, I mean, oof, y'all were already I feel like we're at time and now I wanna go down
Welcome to
this
Lisa and Heather
I know.
conversations.
Now that we've said hello, let's really get into it. Um, yeah, just
Yeah.
as we wrap it up, I think we can't underemphasize this trust takes time. I mentioned before that efficiency makes me itchy. All these things that it feels like we're trying to squeeze time out of. I'm hopeful. Maybe we do make a lot of things more efficient so that we have more time for thoughtful dialogue that's trust building, for deep understanding across people and teams and in community. Um, right. What feels true to me is the cultural wave and energy feels fast, and I think trust is built in slow. And
Mm.
I don't know how we stand it. I mean, all the time. I mean, even just to have a strategy session with your leadership team, like it takes a lot to slow. I mean, I've had pause buttons made for a reason that sometimes the most important action we can take isn't a forward. It's a stillness in some
Mhm.
way. And I don't mean to stop. I have stuff we have to do things. And I hope we can remember to cultivate what you're saying in these relational things, and not even in yes, in service to what we're trying to get done, but so much of this is the humaning. Like, we are having a
Mhm.
human experience that happens through connection with others. It is where we
Mhm.
cultivate joy. It's how we feel seen. It's where we find belonging. So all of that has value of its own, not to mention it is the foundation with which we can take risk, with which we can have difficult conversations, with which we can do all of these things that we've talked about previously on this call today that are not easy to do and are going to be tricky with the strongest connection, but for sure just the resilience and connection and support that we need in team. I hope we'll continue to make time to yeah, whatever that looks like, and I'm not saying it needs to be, strawberry shortcake every day, every meeting, but just the space to know each other, and that we expand that, right? I think and I'm hopeful that this podcast, even in the way we're talking about the "and," can make space for conversation that really is fueled by curiosity. I think so much of
Mm.
it, right? That's to me, that's how we get there, is I'm curious about you. I'm curious about your perspective. I want to better understand. And that's just stuff that isn't like a quick chat GPT scan of things. And I'm not anti-tech or AI. I'm just in follow-up to your point,
Yeah.
about
No, but that's
trust
what we're
and
getting ready to
about
navigate.
trust and
That is
time.
absolutely the finding the way forward with all of that together.
I have to tie it up. Lisa will be back, y'all. We have infinite things. Yes, she's showing us her and sign. I feel like we need to post it. Like, send me a picture of you with your and sign so I can stick it on Instagram for everybody. Because y'all know now I've been convinced that we're should be all the places. So you can follow Stand in the And on Instagram, where we share kind of fun photos and other things behind the scenes in the show notes. So we'll link, Lisa, if you'll send me your information about VUCA Prime, we'll stick that in the show notes. I'll make sure I connect y'all to this Moments of Impact book. It's a great resource because let's continue to share with each other what we're learning about, showing up in the messiness so that we can continue to do so with connection and trust and clarity. There's big work ahead. I look forward to hearing from folks that are listening. It has been so lovely. People are starting to send us, whether through Instagram or text or emails, sort of what's standing out to them, what resonates with them in the podcast. So I hope y'all continue to do that. I hope that you'll share podcasts that resonates. Let your team, hey, maybe some of the framework that Lisa shared feels helpful, or maybe we said a little snippet of something that helps you have a different conversation and get curious with your team and your collaborators so that we can all we have big work to do, Lisa.
Always. Always.
And
we love it.
We love it and are humbled by it and all the and things that keep us showing up. I am glad to know that folks like you and your team and partners are out there doing the big, hard work of public health in a real tricky time. So thank you to you and your team for what y'all do and what you're up for on everybody's behalf, in service to the public's health. So appreciate you and everybody else. And Lisa, I'll see you soon. And till next time, stay curious. Bye.
Likewise. Take care.
The Stand in the And podcast is supported by Human-Centered Strategy, where we help leaders and teams build connection and strategy and complexity so that everyone can flourish. To learn more or to work with us, please visit us online at humancenteredstrategy.com or message me on LinkedIn.